Welcome to In Vivo, our series of live question and answer sessions with San Antonio's major mayoral candidates. I'm Greg Jefferson, Metro Editor of the San Antonio Express News, and I'm joined today by City Hall reporter Megan Rodriguez.
Good morning.
And our special guest today is Councilwoman Melissa Havrda. She is an attorney who specializes in federal disability cases. She ran and was elected to District 6 in what, 2019? 19. Now, before we get started, a word about your part in all of this. If you have any questions for Councilwoman Havrda, please go to the Q&A button, click on it, and ask your question. We'll try to get to as many of them as we can by the end of the hour. Councilwoman, welcome to In Vivo.
Thank you. Please call me Melissa.
Okay, I will do that. Melissa,
Easier.
welcome. How's it going?
Fantastic.
Tell me what your days are like.
They're pretty hectic. My days are about 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Pretty constantly going. Because not only, of course, am I running for mayor, but I am doing the job of being District 6 councilwoman, which is full-time, more than a full-time job. It's I always say it's more of a lifestyle. Because wherever you go, HEB, running in your neighborhood, you're always a representative. So they're pretty hectic days, but I really enjoy it. I love being busy and working hard and representing my community, of course.
Cool. Now, we like to start these nice and general. Why are you running for office? Maybe a little more pointedly, like what is the big challenge you want San Antonio to overcome?
I want San Antonio to look back in 10 years and say, Melissa was the mayor that gave local government back to San Antonians. That's a big challenge, making sure that our community themselves, from Inner West Side to Stone Oak, East Side to Harlandale area, every single community is being represented. And I don't believe it's like that now. I think we're on the way to doing that, but to be truly inclusive of everybody in San Antonio is a real challenge. But I'm up for the challenge, and I think that we can do it as a community together.
Now, we're in a time of real upheaval. So about a week after President Trump's inauguration, the federal government basically froze all federal grants and loans in San Antonio. That kind of threw into question $325 million in this year's budget, which is nearly $4 billion. So it's not a huge chunk, but it's pretty considerable. This was reversed within 2 days, but it tells you the Trump administration can act pretty chaotically. As mayor, how do you kind of plan for the unplannable?
So I'll tell you, I've never known a regular council term. I was in office about 8 months. A pandemic started. George Floyd was killed, and I was chair of public safety. We had a winter storm. We have now this. We have all of these really tumultuous times. So I don't know anything but upheaval in our city, as far as a representative. But I think that it really underscores highlights the importance of local government. I know our community feels really strongly about voting for president, voting for our state elections, but we have a pretty abysmal municipal voter turnout. So, I always say when you open your front door, everything you see, I take care of, right? Your streets, your drainage, your lighting, police and fire, all of that. The president doesn't, right? So I think when we're talking about the upheaval that are some of these executive orders are, they're bestowing down on us. I'm being polite about that. It's up to us. It's up to us as local leaders to defend. We're the last line of defense for our community. And sometimes people get upset. Why are you getting involved in things that don't have to do with city government? I was elected to represent my community, to protect my community. And it doesn't mean that I have to stay in one lane or another. I have to do that however the community is asking me to. And they have asked. They want to know, what are we doing about these executive orders? What's going to happen to our city budget if we lose this 325 in federal funding? It's scary. And I have turned from kind of fear for our community to anger and really trying to figure out how do we move forward together as a community. But I've moved away from anger as well, only because kind of going through the stages, right? Only because we have to keep our heads right. And that's something I think I've been pretty consistent. I'm pretty strong, strongly in the middle politically. And I think most of our community is. So when they come to me worried about this or that, I have to be that level head. And so learning about everything and bringing in community to understand, that's how we're all going to move forward together.
Now, I mean, you know, in the midst of what could be shaping up to be a mass deportation, like how do you talk to the federal government? How do you address the Trump administration? Is it kind of conciliatory? Is it
No, it's fight.
No.
It's
Okay.
all fight. There's no conciliation here. There's no way to help them understand what is happening here in our communities. I mean, I would love to invite them here and, hey, these are the real people that you're affecting. I don't know that that's going to make a difference. I know I think the vice president was here in the Valley and made it, made a bigger stand on what they were doing is right. Again, in defense of the community that I live in, we're already having mass deportation. I mean, maybe not deportation, but we're having a mass exodus. I just talked with a school board member, Edgewood. They lost 200 students in this last several weeks because they left. They're not coming to school because they're afraid of getting in trouble. They're afraid of getting detained, either them or their parents, or they're afraid of going home and their parents won't be there. That's 200 students in the smallest district in our city. And that's one example. It's happening across the city. It's already happening. We're already losing good people.
Are you worried about the effect on San Antonio's economy? I mean,
Absolutely.
I mean, you could have a lot of people not showing up to construction sites.
Absolutely. It's happening, I think, in Nebraska that's happening, right? They're having a real loss of workforce, and it's affecting their day-to-day. It's affecting how they live. It's affecting their economy. Everything. When we talk about workforce, that's the underlying, that's the base to the pyramid of our economy. And so when we lose a good amount of our workforce, we're going to struggle, and we're going to have to figure that out together.
Kind of going back to some of the federal funding that we were talking about at the beginning. So I know it is just a fraction of the city's $4 billion budget, but it does cover more than 750 employees for the city. And it's like sprawled across about a dozen departments. I guess, can you tell me more tangibly what your game plan would be if elected and some of these monies were just taken away or frozen?
So I very much believe in contingency plans. When we talked about the funding for the Migrant Resource Center, I fought over and over, what is our plan B? What are all our contingency plans if we lose this federal funding? And that's the same thing here. We have to figure out how we're moving forward. And number one, we have to protect the jobs that we have. It's the city employees are the backbone of the city. They do that day. When I say I'm responsible for the streets and drainage, all of that, I'm responsible to figure out the policy and the development, but they actually literally are doing that work. They're filling the pothole. They're picking up your trash a couple times a week. And it's important that we're protecting those jobs, again, because that's the base of our economy. If not only that, but that's going to eventually affect all of us. I mean, I think about in Paris, they had those riots over the trash pickup, right? If we lose a certain amount of sanitation workers or police officers, or our police officers are different because they're a different mechanism of funding. They don't come from general fund, or they do. I'm sorry, but we have that's protected. But different governments or different departments in our government are going to have trouble just existing, and that's going to have an impact on every one of us as San Antonians. So that's number one, I think, is protecting those the city employees. After that, we have to look at how are we going to make sure that our nonprofits are being taken care of as well. I have been for making sure that nonprofits have an off ramp. We want to give city funding to nonprofits. They're doing very important work out in the community. They're helping people to do what the city is not able to do or isn't the business of doing. So they really take care of a lot of like domestic violence victims, all different kinds of San Antonians. But losing that funding could be devastating to them and essentially devastating to our entire community. So making sure that we are judicious about our funding to nonprofits, I think, is really important. And we may have to pare back. I mean, that's a reality. If it comes down to it, we're going to have to pare back and figure out where those cuts are being made. I'm talking a lot about participatory budgeting and going into the community and asking them, what do you want to see us spend our dollars on? I do that right now in my district in the form of a survey, and we get great responses. But really kind of a formalized process.
Where do you think should maybe be trimmed from at this point? Like if we
Yeah.
if we said today we're
Yeah.
going to lose a chunk of this money,
Yeah.
where are you?
Well, you also have deficits coming up.
Right.
I mean, you're
Right.
going to
All of
make
that.
you're
Yeah.
going to have to make spending decisions like that anyway.
Right. So I think where we start is the ZBB, right? The zero-based budgeting, and we've already implemented that, or not implemented. We've created the policy, and we're going to be implementing it. And I think it's sort of, to me, it's wiping the slate clean. It's let's start from scratch. It's not going to be a.
What do you take zero-based budgeting to mean? Like
That-
we talk about it, we kind of talk about it in kind of
Yeah.
subtly different ways, but I mean those differences
To me,
kind of matter.
it's sort of wiping the slate clean, starting from scratch, starting from zero, literally, and building up from there. We have, the budget book is that thick, right? And we all council members go through it, and we go and try to, figure out where we're going to cut.
Have you read a complete budget?
I have, my first term, I read that book back to back. I did, and I was like zombied out. Don't get me wrong. But and I didn't understand some of it. I mean, I have an MBA, and I was going through it and like, what exactly does this mean? What is this line item? Because some of the language gets a little flowery, right? So going through and trying to really, that's in my stage of kind of really learning and understanding the city budget itself and where every dollar was going, and finding things that, what is this? What are we spending our money on? That's it. To me, it's that, again, wiping the slate clean. But on the city side, they do a fantastic job. I mean, our budgeting department is really, they're just smart people. They know what they're doing. But I think it's just time for all of us to just wipe that slate clean, start building from scratch. And we find those inefficiencies. We maybe find some redundancy. And hopefully we'll find some cuts there.
And I will highlight for viewers that right now the plan for this upcoming fiscal year budget is just for a handful of programs or departments to essentially, to be using this model. And so true zero-based budgeting, when you talk to researchers and everything, it's more about like going over like a full government and every department. But the city is starting small with a few departments and kind of looking at everything line item by line item of what needs.
I wouldn't call it starting small. We're starting in a way that we need to make sure that this is going to be efficient for our community, right? We don't want to wipe the slate clean, and meanwhile everybody's like, where's my trash, where's this and that? We want to be responsible with it. So even picking those few departments is a pretty big step from where we've gone, but we have to take those incremental steps to get where we need to go. I
do want to hear also your thoughts on some of the kind of proposed changes that Mayor Nirenberg and Councilwoman Adriana Rocha-Garcia, who's also running for mayor, and Councilman Manny Pelayo is also a mayoral contender. Everyone's kind of talking about what to do next, and with the looming threat of federal cuts. And Mayor Nirenberg put out a memo this past week kind of talking about wanting to maybe lean on the Ready to Work program as a way to help people who are laid off from federal positions if those cuts end up affecting San Antonio, and kind of thinking of ways in which the program, which is meant to, is a job training program created during the pandemic for folks who needed to get into better paying positions to be able to move ahead and make more than $15 an hour. But the program has struggled a bit, of course. It originally was sold as something that could potentially help 80% of participants get to jobs that were paying $15 or more. But as of today, when I was looking at it, that goal has not been met. They're not getting it in the 6-month span that it was originally talked about. It's about 55%. So I guess all of that to say, first, what are your thoughts on kind of this idea of potentially leaning on Ready to Work, but also just your thoughts on the Ready to Work program and how it could potentially be overhauled if you were to.
So I believe I agree with the mayor in sentiment. I do want to take care of our federal workers. At the end of the day, they're San Antonians, and that's my job, is to take care of San Antonians. The execution is something different. I'm not sure how we're going to incorporate them into Ready to Work. I think, again, I agree with the sentiment. I think the devil's in the details, right? I want to see how that's going to be executed, and how we're focusing that funding. I also believe that what I do emphatically agree with is that we should expand Ready to Work. We cannot be so narrowly tailored. We have to stay true to the ballot language because this was a voter approved project, and I feel really strongly about that. But expanding Ready to Work has been something that I've been pushing for a long time, and keep getting told that we're not going to expand it. We're going to stay in our lane. We're going to focus on second chances. And I disagree with that. I think we need to be creative and innovative. If the program isn't working in a way that people expected it to work, because people will argue it is working, but I think it's just, we
Oh,
can
you want
say,
those? Do you
I think
it's
it,
advertised?
not as advertised.
Okay.
I think it's working for a lot of people. And I've
Yeah.
had good conversations with people that I represent that have gone through the program, and they're just big fans of it because they're doing better than they did when they started. And that ultimately was the goal.
Right.
Now, the numbers are a different story. Focusing on the actual people that it's affecting, real San Antonians, that's meaningful to me. But I say, okay, well, this is working here narrowly. Let's grow it. Let's expand it. We only have it for so long. We only have the funding for so long. And I wanted to look at bringing in programs for high school kids. There are programs that, including specifically cybersecurity, that you can go through a 4-year program in school and graduate with a skill set and certifications that allow you to have a $70,000 a year job in cybersecurity. We're growing. I mean, my district actually, cybersecurity is a big field here in San Antonio. And I kept getting told by the people that were pushing the prop initially that we don't want to expand it. We want this for second chance people. This is only meant for people that have been kind of, downtrodden by life and want to come back. I get that, but I also don't get the reasoning. Why shouldn't we give them a chance right off the bat? Why make them go through the rigmarole of needing the second chance? So I agree back with the premise of this and helping some terminated federal workers to have this second chance, to have, I shouldn't even say second chance because it was through no fault of their own, right? But have a chance at a position. I need to see how that's going to be executed. With all the pushback for expanding the program that I've seen in the past, it's going to take a lot of political fortitude, which I know that I will definitely push for.
I mean, there's a good argument to be made, though, that if before you expand it, you should probably fix it. Like if you're not happy with the numbers of program graduates or how quickly, I mean, one of the targets is, to place percentage of within
80% within 6 months was
Right.
originally what the target was. We're at 55%.
Right. I mean, shouldn't you actually start meeting targets?
Yeah, and
like
I don't
that
believe
before you
that.
expand it?
I absolutely believe that, and we shouldn't ever change a target. If that's the goalpost, then you can't keep
Right.
moving it, right?
I mean,
However,
shouldn't you hit the goalpost before you expand the program?
well, but we're not hitting the goalpost.
Right.
So maybe expand is the wrong word. It's
Okay.
move. It's
Okay.
shift. It's
Okay.
it's alter, and make it work. Make it work for our community. That's what I was pushing for with the cybersecurity program. That's what I would push for federal workers if there is a well executed plan moving forward. But we have to get past the initial. But this is what we wanted to do. This is what we meant to do. We just got to break free of that. That's a sunk cost. We got to keep moving and make it work in reality for our community, not just on paper. So absolutely. And I would like to see us hitting those goals, but in a different way.
Right. Now, council voted last year to make grants to employers basically to provide their own training.
Yeah.
Did you support that?
Yes, I do support upskilling. Right. The problem that a lot of us have was,
shouldn't that be a company's responsibility to train their employees?
the company. That's where I think we went wrong. If you have a big corporation with all these resources, you don't need my city dollars. I want to help that small business.
We are giving them to
Agreed.
large employers.
I wanted to
like this
see,
$50.
and a lot of us did, talk about bringing that training to small businesses. I'm pushing right now for a policy change because we as a city roll out the red carpet for the big companies to come to San Antonio, all these incentives, and we want you here. And that's great. I mean, I love it. I think we're doing a great job of that. And we don't do it for our small businesses. So you own a flower shop or a bakery, and you want to grow it to the lot next door, or you want to maybe have a branch in another area of town. We offer no incentives for them. So going back to that, the city dollars, if we're going to invest in employers, small businesses are the vast majority of our employers in our city. I mean, even nonprofits, so they're a huge employers. So that's where I think we should be focusing those monies on for training and investment into those small businesses.
Well, you talked a little bit a moment ago about wanting to kind of change the age limit, opening it up to high schoolers for the Ready to Work program. But I guess, do you feel like that's in line with what voters approved in 2020? And
I do.
Also, okay, can you tell me a little bit more about that?
I do. The voters approved a work training program. Nowhere in the ballot language does it specifically say it has to be people who are second chance. There was I guess a self-imposed age limit or maybe maybe not limit, but an age base, 18 and above. That 18 and above it was not specific. So I think we can be creative and again, stay within the parameters of the voting, the ballot language. Of course, legally we have to do that. And I believe in that, but it didn't specifically say it has to be second chance. It has to be this or that. Those were imposed all after. So again, I keep saying it's being innovative and creative, but I don't actually think it is. It's just, let's kind of include everyone. As many people as we can anyway.
I guess how would this differ from like vocational and technical schools that high schoolers already have access to?
There are vocational and technical schools. There are programs. Matter of fact, Northside ISD has great magnet school programs. But this is specific to cybersecurity. This is a job that you can have with certain skill set and certification right out of high school to get a $70,000 a year job. Now, there's a school in my district that has specifically, it's plumbing, right? They have a plumbing certification, and you can graduate with OSHA certifications and get your apprenticeship. That's really important. This is specifically for cybersecurity. And that's a start. I want to be clear that that's a start. We should continue to fund these spaces that we're not currently funding. School districts are funding a lot of other vocations, not specifically cybersecurity. I would like to see childcare professionalized. That's a big issue in our city is lack of childcare. And some of it is because it's hard to find employees that are qualified to do that work. So having a school system that helps with childcare, even back down to CDLs, right? Getting those once you're old enough to get those in programs in high school. So I think it's just a beginning, but there's a lot of gaps that we should be filling for our community.
I'm going to jump in with a viewer question. Instead of allocating $1 billion or 61% of the general fund to policing, given the root causes of crime given that the root causes of crime are illiteracy and poverty, what will you do specifically to work and support local school districts and universities to prepare students for high-paying jobs in San Antonio?
That's really important. And we, there's a state law now that we can't reduce funding for police officers. And I'm not suggesting that. We need to make sure that public safety is partly policing. I mean, we just recently put 105 more police officers in our community. And we have to because we're growing. I mean, it's just proportionally we have to do that, right? We want our police officers to have the backup and, of course, the equipment they need, police and fire. But going back to the root causes, that's something that I felt really strongly about. When we had our ARPA dollars, the mayor gave different ARPA dollar amounts to different committees, and public safety, which I chair, received $26 million from ARPA dollars. Every penny of that went to mental health resources because mental health is also public safety. Even autism resources. There were resiliency and recovery and resiliency dollars. There were parents in our community who thought maybe their child has autism and they couldn't get tested for 18 months. So giving them that funding, the nonprofits that funding helped them to help those children much earlier. And with a condition like that, every day matters, especially when you're very young. So going back to root causes, we're helping people with mental health conditions. Our SA core team, now we started that on our public safety committee. And we started off with one team was like 9 to 4. And now we have 3 round the clock. Still not enough for the whole community, but we're taking those incremental steps. That's also root cause. We're taking care of all of that. Another big part of it, and this is to the person's question, is supporting our schools. So I have also a very specific school safety plan. There are state laws that we're not using and those mechanisms to help so a city can help our school districts. It's, you'll never hear me say that's not my job, because there are people that will say, nope, we don't get involved with our school districts. Again, those are people that I still represent. If it's not, not the funding mechanism per se, but there's so many ways to help our school system. It's safety, it's these programs, it's going to we talk about the root causes of poverty. Another one of my big initiatives is helping kids that are aging out of the foster care system. We put $7 million of ARPA money towards housing foster children. We have about 1,500 or so children that age out of the system every year in San Antonio, and they have nowhere to go. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them have nowhere to go. So it's a pipeline to incarceration, to being unhoused, and to trafficking. That is a root cause. That's going to be, maybe people that are committing crimes because they have no other way to live. So 1,500 people a year, so even half that, if it's 750 or so, that's a huge amount of our population that we can help, and we can help. It's something that you'll see the results down the line, but we have to create that pipeline. And so my husband's a high school administrator. I see, I have a lot of family members that are educators, and the fact that they're paying their own funds to educate our children is very difficult. So making sure that our teachers are taken care of, pushing state, that's the other thing that we have as council members and the mayor has, is a huge platform.
Right.
And I think sometimes it's wasted because we don't get involved in helping our school districts.
Well, like give me a couple practical ways that City Hall could become involved in public education. I mean, there's like structurally, there's no role for the city in public education.
Structurally, but I believe morally, we do have a role. So I go to my school safety plan. Every day I drop my daughter off at school and I say a blessing over her. And one of my prayers is that she just comes home safe and alive. And that's really awful that every parent that's dropping their kids off at school has to, that shouldn't be the scariest part of your day, right? So school safety plan, there's a state law specifically that says that every school in a municipality or in school districts has to have a safety assessment. I know that the school districts are doing the best they can because, of course, it's another mandate by the state that's not funded. And they're doing the best that they can, but they're not having true assessments. So I say we look at that as a city. How do we go in and we do those assessments? We have to figure that out. That's a huge issue. Just feeling safe in school it shouldn't be an issue for our kids and our grandkids. So that's one way. I think also looking at ways of, like I said, supporting our teachers in a way that's maybe not so monetary because we have to look at funding, but there are a lot of nonprofits that are out there doing good work too, and maybe funding the nonprofits to help our teachers. There's no singular way to do it, but we can't say we just, that I don't have a structural mechanism for that, so I can't do it. We absolutely can.
Now, kind of on a related question, San Antonio, we've had all kinds of mayors, right? We've had like kind of up and down,
very diverse, diverse city,
up and down the political continuum from very liberal to fairly conservative.
Sure.
None of them have been able to really touch San Antonio's high poverty rate. Right now it's at 71, or, pardon me, 17. It's not that bad. It's 17.1%. It's still very high. Is there I think it's reasonable to kind of ask, is there anything at all a mayor can do to bring the poverty rate down? Because nobody's figured it out yet.
I do think there's something a mayor can do, but no mayor can do it by themselves. I mean, you have to bring the community with you, and you have to. I mean, I ask every one of those. I would ask every one of those mayors. Did you start in those impoverished communities? Did you ask them what they need? So many times you see people sitting on high, and I think this is going to work. And I'll tell you a quick story. I learned that lesson very early on. I was going to put some sidewalks in a neighborhood because that's my jam, right? I'm a sidewalk person. I love sidewalks. And it was an older neighborhood, and I had all these hundreds of thousands to allocate for sidewalks on this street. And I realized, you know what, I should probably go knock on their doors. So sure enough, I knock on doors and they were like, no, I don't want a sidewalk here. And I said, why don't you want a sidewalk? Everybody wants sidewalks, because they had those monument mailboxes that they had invested in. They spent a lot of money on that. And if I gave them a sidewalk, there goes their investment. And I was like, all right, I get it. So we took that money, we spent it somewhere else, right? So that was a huge lesson to me. Go into these neighborhoods, figure out what is the root cause of the trajectory of your family. I believe that the ticket out of poverty is always education. It was absolutely the ticket for my family. My parents grew up Inner West Side, San Antonio, off Guadalupe. My mom went to Fox Tech. My dad went to Lanier. My dad got education in the Army. He served his country and got an education in the Army, came back and worked for what was then Southwestern Bell. And that set up my brothers and I for success. I'm the first person in my family to have a doctorate, because my dad took that time to get that education, served his country, and my mom was a civil servant at Kelly, right? And the stability that her union also gave her. So that's a lot. It's a very San Antonio story, but that's the ticket out. So going back to your question, how do we help the school districts? That's all. It's all one organism. They're not in silos. But I think that should be a priority, is figuring out how to help our school districts, because that's what's going to lead us as a city out of poverty.
Do you have a school safety plan, or are you
Yes,
in the works?
Yeah.
What is it?
Well, that partly the assessments,
Okay.
That's a big part of it, and making it, going into the schools and helping the teachers to understand. So I go into schools to read to kids and stuff, and I'm not gonna even play around. I'll go and I'll see if a door is locked. I mean, that I'm kind of like, what's happening here, right? I will say that every school I've been in, the door is locked. You know, they're following the rules. The schools are doing the best they can, but without a lot of funding, it's pretty difficult. So I think we need to look at ways to, again, to help nonprofits that help our school districts, like communities and schools, those kinds of nonprofits are doing good work.
I just want to get a quick, feisty little question.
Okay,
one of our viewers. All right.
We're here.
You are a member of the Transportation Committee. This is the City Council's transfer. So you can probably envision how this is going to go. I once watched as you pitched a bus to ease congestion to Austin.
Yeah.
A bus, double exclamation point.
Yeah.
You even brought in Henry C. This would be Henry Cisneros. How is this bus supposed to ease traffic to Austin? Can you elaborate?
Well, I mean, that's mass transportation. Right. I want to be real clear about that. That was a baby step towards what my real goal is rail. I've been really pushing hard for rail to Austin, and really beyond. I mean, the ultimate dream is Monterrey, Mexico, all the way to Oklahoma City, right? Going through San Antonio. Laredo is the biggest port. I don't know if everybody knows this. Laredo is the biggest port in the country. Hands down. They're building new lanes. And so putting people in one vehicle, if it's a bus, if it's a train, that's going to ease congestion. Now, will people take that bus? Will people take that rail? We've got to figure that out.
Did that stall? I mean, there are no buses going.
No, we did. Well, because it was, I got really focused on rail, honestly. But also, yeah, and I didn't bring in Henry Cisneros, so I want to be clear. This was his
baby.
Yeah. But I still think
Diane Rath.
Yeah, Diane Rath. Yeah, she was on. I chair our Alamo area metropolitan planning organization, and she was on MPO at the time. And I still think it's a good idea. Now, like, I mean, and also it's $100,000. That's a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, but in transportation, it's it's not a lot, right? So $100,000 from San Antonio, and then other Austin, some municipalities along the way could have contributed. And I got really focused on rail. I'm on a committee with Judge Brown in Travis County and Judge Sakai. And the stops along the way, because people keep saying, look, these municipalities along the way, they don't want to get bypassed, right? So it's rail that will be faster than driving, and it will be more convenient, and it would ease congestion, most importantly, and of course help our environment. But it will also mean stopping in these other municipalities.
But I mean, what's different from a decade ago? Because you still have the reality of Union Pacific, which owns the rails between San Antonio and Austin. They've got no business incentive at all to give up the rails.
I don't even think we should talk to them anymore.
Yeah, it's like, I think, but in if not that, I mean, you're talking about billions of dollars of investment. It's no longer just about, hey, working out some kind of deal with UP and using their rails. It's about building your own, and that's like billions of dollars. Where does that money come from?
Well, the state, I mean, we have to go to the state. I think that they believe in transportation. And I want to be clear about a couple of things. I don't think we should be talking to you. We shouldn't be asking Union Pacific anymore. They're doing what they do, and I respect the organization, but there's no interest there. And you said that there's no business interest. And I get it. I mean, they're a private business. They're not concerned so much about how we're getting moving people between San Antonio and Austin. They need to move cargo and freight, and they have their own customers. But let's talk again about that organism of poverty, right? And how do we move ourselves out of that? To me, again, that's education. So we have a rail system that maybe there's a kid in San Antonio who got into UT Austin or Texas State, but can't go because they can't afford to live in Austin or in San Marcos, but they could take this rail. That's going to help, again, their trajectory out of poverty if they are in poverty. So it's going to solve a lot of these issues. Now, it's a bajillion, not just billion, bajillion.
But for a project that size, I mean, federal dollars would have to be a part of it.
Absolutely.
And you've got an administration. Granted, it is early in President Trump's second term. There's no reason to think that he suddenly fell in love with rail.
Well, we have to make him fall in love with rail, right? I mean, there was federal dollars.
You're going to do that.
Yeah. Well, I'll get back to you on that. But there is federal funding from Houston to Dallas, because that's a commercial corridor, and that's important. So it's about how we sell it, right? It's not just it is moving people, but it's about how we're showing that, again, from the largest port in the country that has you can't be president and not have an interest in the largest port in the country and what's moving through there. Even if it's we want to make more room for more freight, more cargo, get these people out of the way, let's get them on a rail. I'm not sure. I mean, we have to be creative about that pitch, and it would be a pitch, but there is a precedent for federal funding for rail in Texas, and I don't believe it's a lost cause. We had the bad word of Lone Star Rail, the bad phrase, but I think we have some people that were involved in that on our committee because we want to know what they would have done differently. Why didn't that work?
Right.
And a lot of it is the way the funds were spent. So I think it's
too many studies, too many engineering studies.
I mean, let's just do this. Let's figure it out, find the funding, and get it done. But it's I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunity. Look at the toll road. I mean, are we finding kind of that way around, but still keeping the municipalities in between, the cities in between involved? I'm excited about it. I think it's a creative solution. There was even talk about building an elevated rail along the 35.
Yeah,
so that you don't have to worry about
the former county judge. He loved that project.
That was
I don't know if he
Diane's
still
idea.
does, but yeah,
It's Diane Rath's idea. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But to not have to worry about right of way, right? What I will tell you is, if land acquisition is probably going to be what costs $1 billion. We have Texas landowners that are very savvy. But I think it's a good plan. It's a good idea. And there's that, a saying, right? The best time to plant a seed was plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. If we're planting that seed today, that happens in 20 years, in 30 years, in 50 years, look at our growth. Look at how much we're growing. It's not going to stop. I mean, certain people don't believe that we're not there as far as the pain point. But people, if you're traveling back and forth to Austin, you definitely feel that pain, but we're going to get there. And so I think we should be proactive about the solution.
I mean, how likely do you think it is that something like this could happen, especially any progress in the next 4 years when we're seeing so many programs slashed? I guess, what is, like I said, how likely do you think it is? And then what is your actual projected time frame for when real results could be?
I don't see that happening in 4 years. I mean, I think we're planting a seed. I think it's going to take a long time. The committee we started, it was under Judge Brown and Judge Sakai, I guess about a year and a half ago, and it's a refresh, but it's a brand new. I mean, it's new ideas. Not going to Union Pacific is a big step forward because there were people that still wanted to try to use that rail, and that's just a closed door.
I mean, wasn't that Judge Sakai though? I mean,
initially.
He's no longer.
I don't think so. I think he understands. Okay. Yeah. I mean, we had very frank discussions with. I am very, very candid. I won't go into a room and say, it'd be great if you did this. And if they're can't say bad words. If they're well, they're bullshitting me. We all know it. We all see it. And you say, okay, if it's not going to work, that's fine. Just say it's not going to work. They said it's not going to work. Cool. I'm going to move on my way. I'm not going to waste time here. Right. Money or effort or anything. So we have to be creative about it. So that's when we start looking at different avenues. There is still a contingent that wants to talk to Union Pacific, and I wouldn't bolt that door closed, but I don't see a point in spending time talking with them. They've got to do their thing, and I respect it. So as far as a time frame, I couldn't tell you, 20 years, 10 years. I do not believe it'll happen in 4 years. I don't believe we'll see rail in 4 years. There's also,
I guess I just meant, like, do you think there's any ground that could even be made in these next 4 years?
I do. Yeah. There's a really interesting project in Florida called Brightline Rail, and it's a public-private partnership. That could be something we look at. It's really exciting. I think it's Orlando to Miami, maybe. But there's models out there, and in every one of them they said it's never going to happen. It's not, it's possible, but they made it work. And so and that's Florida. It's a pretty conservative state too. I mean, they're not, the biggest on rail. I do want to be clear about something too. In no way am I suggesting that this is a replacement for 35. I mean, we want options. We want different options, and people love to drive. I love driving. You'd
have to have a lot of train cars to replace 35.
Yeah, exactly. Right. A lot of routes, frequency. It's like a VO always
nothing but train.
Yeah, VO always says frequency. That's their big thing, right? Yeah, for sure. We scale it up.
So you've chaired the City Council's Transportation Committee, as well as the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which kind of farms out federal transportation dollars. Is there a big kind of seismic transportation project that you think San Antonio needs?
Wow, that's a great question. I don't know about seismic. I actually I wouldn't say seismic. I think it's all the little ones that make the difference. Connectors from highways to highway. We look at the south side and all the growth that's happening down there, connecting. I think it's kind of 211 out there, and having those big highways that are the connector roads. That's going to be important. There's not as much infrastructure in certain areas of town, and that's I think we should be spending our funds. To be clear, like you said, MPO, we don't have a set of funds. We take federal funds or state funds and we allocate them. We spent a lot of time early on Bandera Road, on Glevina Road. That's where I think we should be spending our money. The highways they're going to come, right? But not investing in those kind of inner roadways is where we could go wrong.
I want to talk to you more about one of your more recent policy changes regarding CPS Energy windfall funding. So you had really pushed for an effort that would kind of reduce, or the goal is to reduce the frequency and like the amount of rate hikes that consumers would be feeling. And we really saw this play out for the first time this current fiscal year budget. The city council moved to send back $26 million of windfall funding that would have normally been used on some of the last minute smaller projects that the council kind of wants to beef up. And it ended up going all back to CPS Energy. But this is coming at a time of turmoil. We've kind of talked about some of the issues of there's going to be potential for loss of federal dollars. There's also budget deficits that are coming up. I mean, this current fiscal year, there were already 23, almost $24 million that were trimmed out of the budget. The plan is to trim $13 million and potentially more out of this upcoming fiscal year's budget. And so I guess kind of a two-parter here. Do you have any concerns about this potentially being a mistake to have come up with this policy that would be sending more money back to CPS Energy, what was typically kind of not dependent on because it was windfall funding, but that everyone often expected to be able to have? Or is it something that you would maybe roll back in any capacity if you were to be mayor?
Absolutely not. It was not a mistake. As a matter of fact, I think it was a huge win for San Antonio. We went through a rate increase not that long ago, and we heard loud and clear from this community, I do not want another CPS rate increase. That's what started this whole policy issue for me. Initially, I had said, let's give so CPS gives the city, because we own CPS as a city, right? It's publicly owned, and SAWS. We get 14% of their revenue back into the city budget. My proposal was to give them 2% back to mitigate a rate increase, because again, community spoke loud and clear. Businesses, large and small, residents of our community. That morphed into a policy where we're giving any excess or windfall, like you put it, 10% over that goes back to CPS. So that 26 million was a product the first time of that policy. Windfalls don't happen all the time. Matter of fact, if we have a really crazy summer, hot, I mean, hotter than even normal, right? Or we have, another winter storm, and those CPS comes up with what they call a windfall. That's us giving that. They give us their funds and we give them that percentage back. This year, they said, or late last year, they said they weren't going to ask for a rate increase. That's meaningful to me. I mean, it worked. I don't regret a second of that. It all played out the way it needed to play out. We had a lot of community engagement. Not a lot of the council members were with me initially, but I made my case. I pushed for it. The mayor came on board, and we all now see that it worked. So I'm really, I thought it was really successful. Now that $26 million could have gone to everybody's pet projects, but I'm much happier giving back to the entire community, not just, certain things in my district. There's funding for all of those other things. And the other thing is we can never rely on a windfall. So I can't say I'm going to wait for a windfall to build this sidewalk. When it happened, we gave it back and it was entirely successful. And I'm really happy about that.
And this is kind of a little bit related. Is the city doing enough, considering that our summers are getting hotter? I mean, I think that I don't think that's very controversial. It's happening. Is the city doing enough to mitigate heat during the summer? I mean, they've got a pilot program with cool pavement. They're planting more trees. Is that enough? I mean, it seems kind of slow, kind of leisurely.
I ain't gonna lie to you. I don't know how I feel about cool pavement, but I don't know.
Not a fan?
No, I'm not saying I'm not a fan. I would like to see real data on that. They're pilots here and there. I would like to see the data and how that's working. Trees, different story. I think that we should do that as much as possible. That's the natural way to mitigate heat. It's a relatively inexpensive investment. I've talked to Via about sheltered bus stops, having vegetation on top, as much as we can do. I think that's, going forward, that's what the science, we know it will work. I'm not saying I'm not a fan of cold pavement. I need to see before a bigger investment that it's really mitigating heat. But I do think we have to look at our cap, right? We have the cap plan that we have. When I voted it in, it was one of my first votes on council. We voted in what I was told was understood really was like a framework. So to me, a framework is like a house, right? Like a framing of a house. And we had to fill in all the drywall and fill in all the rooms. And we're doing that little by little, but I do think we need to focus on our environment within the city to mitigate that heat. But I would like to see the most natural ways possible. Of course, at least expensive. We're worried about, some deficits here and there. But I think also that it should be at the top of our priority list, which it's not so much anymore. It kind of fell off. Our big champion for that, of course, was Councilwoman Sandoval, and when she resigned from office, it didn't go by the wayside, but it was not so much a council priority. So I really think it's time to bring it back. I mean, we should have been doing it all along, and we were, but not to the extent I think we should have.
Yeah. Now, quick viewer question. We're reading every day about what the DA calls low-level crime in San Antonio. Car theft and break-ins are rampant. As mayor, what will you do to stop this activity that is costing San Antonians a lot of money? I'm down with that.
Yeah, I'm heavily attuned to that, not only because I'm just, live, work, and play in San Antonio. I'm a native daughter of San Antonio, but I chair public safety. So we had a very specific plan we put in. It started with hotspot policing and kind of advanced forward. And in this last year, we've seen a decrease of overall crime by 6%. Now, ask this person, ask you, ask the average San Antonians. No, it's gone way up. I've seen it,
Right.
But I'll tell you,
it's kind of like how you feel about the economy. The economy is great overall, but my part of it sucks.
Right. Yeah. And that's what matters. To be truthful, that's what matters, is the one that you feel, how you experience it. I had a public safety town hall not that long ago, and Chief McManus got up in front of the group, and they were really irate. What are you doing? What are we all going to do about this? And he said, how many of you believe that crime is higher in our city? They all raised their hands. He said, how many of you have been a victim of crime in the last year? Every single person lowered their hands. So I think, unfortunately, a lot of it is perception. A lot of it is what's being reported. No offense, right? But it's a perception that's being put out. And I get it. I mean, we want to know about where is crime happening in our city. It's an important tool, right? It's alert. It's an education too. But the reality is that we are seeing crime go down 6%, which I would like to see it go down, 100%, of course, but it's now that we have a very informed, data-driven response to it, we are seeing it go down. Now, back to your point, when your car got broken into, crime did not go down 6%. It went up 100% to you, right? So I think
200%.
Yeah, 200, yeah. So I think it's a lot of it is looking at more creative ways. I have been talking a lot about lighting. We mentioned earlier, policing is important, but bad guys don't want to be seen when they're committing their crimes, right? We have a pretty bad problem with mailbox, those community mailbox thefts. And I had one community that they had one mailbox that just kept getting broken into over and over and over. And so I go to the U.S. Postal Service because it's ultimately their property, and there's a lot of this, right? No, it's the HOA, it's this, it's that. So I'm like, all right, I'm super frustrated, and it keeps happening. So we put up a street lamp just right next to it. Guess what stopped happening? No more break-ins. They just don't want to be seen, right? So having a really comprehensive lighting plan. We've even talked about cameras downtown, and I know there's some consternation about that because our civil liberties and privacy, but looking at kind of the high crime areas and having real cameras that can identify plates, and not just our Ring cameras, because a lot of times you catch something on a Ring camera and you're like zooming in, you can't see the plate or the person, but a real quality camera that may be an option. But we have to also bring the community with us, because a lot of the community won't like that. So we have to have those community discussions.
So related, I mean, what do you think of the AI empowered security cameras on Houston Street? Not Houston Street, Commerce.
I mean, I'm not.
This is an SAPD pilot program.
Yeah, I'm not. So myself, I'm not terribly worried about a camera, but what I don't know. I mean, there are real kind of civil liberty and privacy problems for a lot of people. I don't necessarily agree with I mean, look, I mean, AI is a little scary, right? I mean, it's the wave of the future. It's real, but it's for a lot of us maybe just uncomfortable, maybe not scary, but it's uncomfortable. So I think it's as transparent as we can be about what's happening and what we're using those for. They're not using them to target people. And when I mean I don't mean necessarily just PD or whoever has, I don't know who all has access to these, right? And I understand, I mean, I said earlier, I think that we can get creative with cameras, but we have to have the community discussion before. I'm not real excited about a pilot program that wasn't vetted really by the entire.
Do you ever see a crime problem being so bad or the threats so bad that you would consider a facial recognition? Cameras that have that capability.
Which right now the cameras
they
are
did,
not
yeah, that's
going
right.
to
Yeah,
have.
like, totally important. Yeah, they don't have that. But I mean, not difficult to imagine adding that capability.
Yeah, that's scary. That's a little scary to me because I mean, they're still computers. They're not us. I could tell the difference between person, me and I don't have a sister, but me and like a sister, right? Like you can tell the difference between sisters or brothers as humans. A computer, I don't know that it always can. And that's a little, again, it's uncomfortable. So I don't know that we're ready for that. I wouldn't feel comfortable right now implementing something like that because there's so many implications of what could happen, just wrongful arrests or, just the data just being entirely inaccurate. I mean, it happens now without AI cameras. I think without a human human assessment, it could be pretty bad.
All right, so we're 50 minutes in, and you might be thinking, am I going to get out of here without having to answer a Spurs arena question? And the answer is no.
I welcome all
no,
the
you're
questions.
not.
I welcome all the questions. That's what
we got a few from viewers. Not surprisingly, this is a big project. Sure. Actually, God, did I just lose it? I live in your district and voted for you. What is your stance on taxpayers covering a new arena for the Spurs? Well, there are plenty of other areas where billions of tax dollars can be much more helpful. That's what we call a loaded question. Yeah. But let's pick it apart. And, do you favor any public financing first?
So thank you for your support. Sir, ma'am. I want to see this project happen. I think it's important that we look back and see the development for our community. Every dollar we spend downtown, it has a great economic impact across the city. Now, doing it fast and doing it right are two different things. I don't want to see public dollars being spent. Absolutely. That's something I feel really strongly about. And I know that there are, some council members saying, and these are my words, not theirs, but that there's a little bit of a shell game being played, those that we right now, all the presentations have said no public dollars, but TERS money might be used. Right. I want to be real clear about TERS money. It stands for, the R is for reinvestment. So TERS is a tax increment reinvestment zone. It's a zone. So that money that's accumulated there, tax money that's accumulated within that zone has to stay in that zone. So it's not, if you don't live in that zone or do business in that zone, it's not my tax dollars, but it is theirs. And they are currently paying that no matter what for the TERS, right? So Houston Street TERS.
Right.
What you got?
I mean, no. I mean, it's a philosophical, philosophical thing. I just disagree that because we set up a TERS, we say, well, this is special and this is not these tax dollars, they could go nowhere else. That's not true. It is
true. That's a legal mechanism.
Right. But I mean, there's a cost. There's a cost attendant to that. Like if you're going to set up a TERS, that means you're doing without in the general.
But that TERS was already set up.
Right. But I mean,
unless
to pretend that there's not a price we're paying by having a TERS, I think is wrong. There is a price we're paying.
I completely disagree because that TERS was already set up. Unless you want to eliminate that TERS, then those public dollars go all over the city. But right now it's reinvestment zone. Not only that, but they're project based. Okay. So they can't go to, you can't use TERS money to build a sidewalk in District 6. You can't use it even to build necessarily a sidewalk in the TERS unless it's project based. So, I mean, I don't think I'm playing semantics here. It's a legal mechanism. You can only keep the TERS.
I totally agree with that. I'm just saying that just the the existence of a TERS is a cost the city is paying.
So what I will say is this is a conversation that we should have publicly, that the public should be coming and talking about with us.
Don't you think?
100%, 100%. And I'll tell you that that's part of my frustration is I was reading about it in the paper, just like everybody else, right? A lot of it. So I think having this public discussion, really ferreting out, you said piece by piece, I think that's true. We take it piece by piece and look at it. But to go back to my original response is I 100% don't want to see public dollars going to it. Now, I'm a lawyer. What's the definition of public dollars?
So, I mean, but in your telling, that would be TERS money would not be public dollars.
They are public dollars, but within the zone. It's not.
You'd be okay with it.
Regular San Antonians,
like reinvestment.
I'm not sure of that. Again, I want to bring community input to that. I would like to know what this person thinks about it specifically, right? And not just people in the TERS. I want to know, although include them, yes, but the people that live around downtown. I think obviously a displacement program, displacement plan is necessary to avoid that as much as possible. And I want to know what the whole city thinks about it. I've said every dollar spent downtown it affects our entire city economically, but in other ways too. So I think bringing in community as much as we can and I said this in the dais when we voted on the MOU. It was to bring community in as much as possible. And I want to see that plan. I want to see the plan moving forward. And the other thing about community engagement, yes, surveys are important, but it has to be more than a survey. We have to go where people are, where they live, where they work. They're busy working. They're raising their families. They're not going to go downtown to a public meeting about this. Right. So making sure that we're going into community to really have these difficult discussions.
Do you support the city going out, City Council putting a general obligation bond issue on the November ballot, and this would pay for not the arena or any other part of the city's proposed sports and entertainment district, it's Project Marvel, but all a lot of infrastructure, roads, some road work, parks.
I mean, because it would be voter approved. I mean, I'm always supportive of things going to the voter. I mean, as much as we can take things to the voter, I would like that. So yeah, I mean, I would be in support of the voter making that choice. Absolutely, they're going to probably make the choice on the county's venue tax specifically for the arena, right? But that's up to the voter. I mean, I feel really strongly about that.
Now, what do you think the Spurs' responsibility is in all of this?
Financial, absolutely.
Well, I mean, 100%. I'm not asking you to what percentage do you think they should pay? But I mean,
more than 50. I think they should more than half. Yeah, I do at least. Yeah, I'm a huge Spurs fan. Sohan, I love you. I think he's a great player. I'm really excited about next year. Now, we as Spurs fan, we've gotten used to saying next year's our year. Here's our year. But that really has nothing to do with it. It's about the people I represent. And I represent Spurs fans and non-Spurs fans alike, even Lakers fans I represent, right? But I think if the community wants to see this move forward, then this is what we do. I can't say it enough that we have to talk to our neighborhoods, to the people that live here, people that live downtown, people that are directly and indirectly affected. So Spurs' obligation to us, I think it should be financial. I think it should be also helping in the community engagement. They're going to have all the data that on their arena, they've done their studies, I'm sure. And so I'd like to see all of that. I think all of that should be public, and that's their obligation to us.
So talking a lot about public input, but so much of these conversations has already happened behind closed doors and was kind of pinned up and ready to go to be presented to council. I guess, do you think that there's any maybe trust that's been lost by the community, or a concern maybe that their voice really doesn't matter because it's pretty much been ignored?
Yeah. So I think that's one thing I pushed for is this last, like I said, sometimes I was pretty upset that, not sometimes, I was pretty upset that I was reading about it myself in the paper. Not that I deserve any special kind of, backroom talk, but I represent a tenth of the city. It's my job to communicate to them. And I wasn't hearing about this. So I don't know that there were really a lot of backdoor. I think that's a bit of an exaggeration, honestly. But there were talks that were not public. And so I think having those talks publicly is really important. I wish that it happened from the very beginning. I don't know. I can't tell you why they didn't happen from the beginning, but that's one of the things I fought for is again, not us as council members, not me, Melissa. I represent a tenth of the city. And really, in many ways, I represent my entire city. city. So what I fought for was to have the East Side representative in those rooms, because he's going to represent the East Side. He's going to make sure that his people he's fighting for the people that he represents. And that was important to me to have that representative there. And we had to really fight for it. And I introduced the motion, and we were able to successfully get the East Side representative there, as well as District 1, because she's the downtown representative. So again, I can't stress enough, it's not them, it's not those individuals, it's all the people behind them that they represent. And that's bringing community in. That's part of it. It's not all of it, but it's part of having community engagement.
Now you've got the possibility of a bond election, the city council calling a bond election next November, and the possibility of the county calling a tax election also to pay for part of the arena. Now, again, the city bond wouldn't pay, it would pay for a lot of stuff around the arena. Just what's your political sense? Like, are those two issues, are those two elections in danger?
In danger of happening or
not passing? Like, in other words, kind of where are voters at? What's your sense of things? You've been out talking to people across the city.
Yeah,
this is a big issue. How do they feel?
It's tough because I generally get the sense that people like me want to see it happen, but it's all in how, right? I think that it would, if we did it the right way and didn't use public dollars, but for voter approved public dollars, not kind of imposed on the public, I think it could absolutely pass, both of them. I think even the venue tax that the county is going to put up could pass. But communication is important, transparency is important, and holding all parties accountable, including the city, including county, and including the Spurs. Now, all of that falls apart. It's not done. It's maybe there's, a continued lack of trust, not so much. But I do think that people want to see it happen. They just want to see it. They don't want to pay for it. Okay. And I get that.
All right. Last question. We'll give it to Megan.
I wanted to kind of close out talking about one of your recent pushes. You and several council members have been kind of pushing to get another $100,000 for the Reproductive Justice Fund, which was originally created with CPS windfall funding that we had kind of talked about a little bit earlier. And it was $500,000. A lot of council members had hoped that some of that would go toward transportation costs to assist people who are getting legal out-of-state abortions. Ultimately, that's not how it shaped up. Nonprofits really pitched more ideas for other things like doula training and other reproductive health care needs. Really
important stuff.
And though you and the other council members are now asking for another $100,000, where from that would come from is still kind of up for debate, and it's going to city council for full discussion pretty soon here. But I have a question about some of the kind of back and forth that happened here. Okay. So during the Community Health Committee meeting in February or January, there was it didn't get passed along initially. It didn't have enough support, but then the following month got more support when Councilwoman Kaur was present and able to vote for it, and Councilwoman Adriana Rocha Garcia changed her mind and decided not to abstain but to support anyway. But you had come down pretty harshly against folks who on that committee who didn't support it, and I was curious because it, I think, was a little bit surprising to see you really clamp down on them and calling out their lack of support. I guess, is that a way that you would plan to govern as mayor? I guess kind of coming pretty openly against colleagues who disagree with you.
If you're asking me if I'm going to be transparent and honest, absolutely. I'm going to call people out, and I do now. I'm going to call people out when they're being hypocritical, right? You had people on that committee who said that they're pro-choice and say that they support women's reproductive health and then voted it down. You can't say that you believe in all those things, but then you don't want to help it. You don't want to fund it. So, I mean, I don't ever come, with fists up. But when I think that the community needs that, and when my community, frankly, is asking for it, then absolutely, I'm always going to come in ready to fight for what my community needs. And it was successful. I'm thankful. I'm not taking full credit for it, but I'm thankful that I'm not on that committee. And when you're talking about me going, I went to speak to that committee, and I, just like any other public comment, I signed up and I had my 2 minutes, and I said what I thought, and I would have said that as a council member, as a mayor, as a reporter, as a regular San Antonian. And there were other people that said similar things. So it ultimately didn't. It went through, and I'm thankful that the chair, as I mentioned, I'm not on that committee, so that the chair Castillo brought it back for them to look at. Now they had, I think there were some technical issues, I think, in January, something about the way it was agendized or something. So there was some confusion. So I think that was why she brought it back, and now it's going to full council. Whether it'll pass there is a different story. But if you're going to say one thing but do another, I am going to call it out always.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I really appreciate you taking the time, Councilwoman Cabello Havrda.
Thank you so much.
Welcome, or not welcome. Goodbye.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna do the whole thing all over.
Okay, let's do it. Let's do it.
Maybe mix up the question
want to
order.
stay
And thank you for joining us. We will see you next time. See you later.
Thank you.